Life has always been full of mysteries, with many concepts like life, death, the afterlife, good and evil, leaving many to yearn for an answer. Many civilizations have created mythologies, narratives and legends to answer these hidden questions, while also conveying how the world should be both viewed and treated. Art, especially in video games, incorporate these mythologies into their own narratives, enriching their worlds. Greek mythology can be seen in games like Kid Icarus, with Pit being a concocted embodiment of Icarus and Eros. Assassin's Creed Odyssey also heavily incorporates Greek mythology. Norse mythology can also be seen in Assassin's Creed, in Valhalla, and also in many other games like Elden Ring and Skyrim. But all of these video game depictions of mythologies pale in comparison to God of War. The divine personification of strength, the half-god, half-mortal Kratos was initially a Spartan warrior. In the first God of War, Kratos is the servant of Ares, who deceives him into accidentally murdering his family. Kratos is propelled into furious revenge, attempting to defeat the Greek gods, and in the end sacrifices himself in order for mankind to have hope, defying the gods. This is the plot of the first era of the God of War, with the Greek mythology game stretching to God of War 3. At the release of the 2018 version of the God of War, Kratos has somehow survived, now calling Midgard his home, one of the 9 realms of Norse mythology. With a new family, Kratos and his son Atreus set about scattering his belated wife's ashes at the highest peak of the 9 realms, causing friction with the Norse gods in the process. And even though mythology is set to reduce the hum of unanswered questions, God of War is still surrounded by many mysteries and vague events. And these kinds of mysteries led many fans to conspire and conclude what events could have actually happened. An iceberg chart is a format that these conspiracies and facts can be presented, with the higher points in the iceberg detailing more well-known theories and fun facts. And as we gaze deeper down the iceberg, the more peculiar and even absurd the conspiracies can become. We'll be focusing this video on an iceberg based on the most recent game, Ragnarök, where Kratos and Atreus set about to learn and prepare for the prophesized event of Ragnarök, the twilighting of the gods, and the ending of the world. So let's quickly descend from the peak of the 9 realms into the mythological world of the God of War Ragnarök Iceberg. And what better way to display the deepness of the God of War mythology than through something as insignificant as Ragnarok's release date? Sony had originally planned Ragnarök to be released in 2021, but with another big narrative-driven game in the pipeline, Horizon Forbidden West, they decided to push the game out to 2022, later deciding on a November 9th release. Emmanuel Dole noted that the release date may have been deliberately planned to coincide with the lore. On November 8th, a total lunar eclipse occurred, which is when the Earth is between the Sun and the Moon, with the Earth's shadow being casted onto the Moon, turning the Moon red. This is known as a blood moon. In Norse mythology, there are 2 giant wolves that are only really mentioned in passing. The one who mocks, Skull, and the one who hates, Hati, each chase Mani, the Moon, and Sol, the Sun, although it's not entirely clear which wolf chases which. Even so, they constantly chase the sun and moon across the skies until the downfall of the cosmos, Ragnarök, in which they catch their prey, swallowing them as the sky and the earth darkens. The Poetic Edda is a collection of Old Norse poems, and it details Fenrir, the father of Skull and Hati. The brood of Fenrir, among those in monster skies, was soon to steal the sun from the sky. Emmanuel Dole relates the darkening of the sky, the coming of Ragnarök, to an eclipse, and that the release of the video game Ragnarök was being marked by a real-life swallowing of the moon, and this could definitely be intentional. Skull and Hati do also appear in the 5th God of War, being a mechanism to change day and night. And the studio of God of War Ragnarök, Sony Santa Monica, did post a thought-provoking emoji in reply to this theory. But what convinced me more about the release date purposely relating to Ragnarök was a teaser trailer released back in 2020, It concludes with the statement, Ragnarök is coming. And this could not just be the game, but reality's Ragnarök, the catching of the sun and the moon. And not only does Ragnarök brilliantly reference Norse mythology, it even begins building upon it. Helping Kratos and Atreus, the dwarven brothers Sindri and Brok help by forging improved weapons and equipment. In Norse mythology, Brokkr and Eitri, also known as Sindri, were dwarven brothers as well, and after a bet with Loki, they were goaded into making things of great craftsmanship. In Ragnarök, when Kratos and Atreus venture to Alfheim, the home of the elves, only Sindri accompanies them.
Surprised to see you out here, Sindri. You must hate the sand.
Oh, it is the worst. But with Brok banned from Alfheim, it's up to me to keep you ship-shape and sharp.
So why is Brok banned from Alfheim?
Oh, that's, I don't know if... Well, do you know what a juicy noken is?
No.
Well, thanks to Brok, the elves sure do.
What is a juicy...
No.
A great conversation that adds colour to personalities, especially Kratos. But his abruptness only makes me more intrigued. What really is a juicy noken? Well, in Norse mythology, nokens are male water spirits who play an enchanted violin, luring women and children to their deaths in the waterways of Scandinavia. They were thought to be shapeshifters as well, and could be defeated by the calling of their name. In the God of War, the Noken actually appear, and they're much more hideous than what Norse mythology describes, along with a much more haunting song, empowering other enemies around them. As for what a juicy Noken is, well, that is as far as we can go without some speculation. Whatever a juicy Noken is, it seems that Brok either explained or showed to the elves what it is, and this caused them to be banished. Edie Pot innocently believes that the juicy Noken is describing a cut of Noken meat, being juicy, and perhaps the elves were disgusted by this, banishing him. But I don't think this really explains Sindri's reluctance to explain what a juicy Noken is. More popular theories play on Brok's ill-mannered nature. Nokens are strongly affiliated with being naked, with naken being nude in Swedish. Lucas Goodwin 1999 believes that a juicy Noken is a naked dwarf's act, being a thick juicy Noken. Ugh, now I know why Sindri was so hesitant. But perhaps he did it for a better reason, like Collector 2012 thinks. Brok simply got himself banned from Alfheim because he was explaining to them what the term juicy Noken was, which is why Kratos abruptly prevented Ciri from talking about it. However, these are all based upon the assumption that Sindri is actually telling Kratos and Atreus the truth. And he doesn't entirely have the best track record for that. Brok unusually has a blue skin colour, which Atreus does ask about.
So how come Brok's blue and you're not?
Why?
Oh, it's fine. Very good question, actually. You see, my brother's not as careful as I am. In fact, he prefers to work with metals using his own bare hands. Ugh. No gloves. Says it's the only way he can hear what it wants to be. Touch enough raw silver and it changes your skin irreparably. That means forever.
Sindri states that Brok has argyria, which is the turning of the skin to blue, through the exposure of chemical compounds of silver. But this isn't exactly true, which Sindri confesses to in Ragnarök.
Long before you were born, there was an accident at the forge. Brok died. I couldn't accept it. I went to the Lake of Souls in Alfheim to steal him back. Legions of souls tried to stop me. I can still feel them crawling all over my skin. Thing is, I could only get 3 of his 4 soul parts back.
Sindri.
Brok just thought he got knocked out. I've been lying to him ever since.
The Lost Pages of Norse myth is the source of unravelling more of the official backstory from the God of War, acting as now found lost pages of the Prose Edda. In episode 4, The Forging of Leviathan, Brok's reason for his form is revealed.
Brok had felt a sharp pain on his thigh a moment before. Now, an icy chill numbed his leg, then his torso, and then his heart. Its bitter gift delivered, the spider dropped quickly to the floor, scurrying through an unseen crack in the stone wall. Brok, the master smith, was no more. His skin now a sickly, ashen blue.
God of War Geek mentioned the true death back in 2020, and they also mentioned that apparently there's a dwarven rite of death, which forbids messing with those in the afterlife, as those that are dead must remain dead. But I couldn't concretely find a source in Norse mythology for this. But come the time of Ragnarok, Sindri does confide that both him and Brock were shunned by the other dwarves. This transgression by Sindri, forcing Brock back to life, was a choice he wasn't to make, and he shared this same regret. Add this embarrassment and guilt of being unable to live without Brock caused him to lie for many years, and a juicy Noken would pale to a white lie compared to this. But this regrettable resurrection may have had more good than we realise. But to find that out, we need to travel to the lands of Jötunheimr, deeper down the iceberg. A cold, dark and barren place, Jötunheimr is a realm that's the main inhabitants of the giants. The giants paint the fates of various gods and goddesses. The panel on the left would be their origin, while the panel on the right would be their fate. Atreus awakens in Ironwood, where he sees the giant's prophecy of Kratos' fate. It's destiny that Kratos is to die during Ragnarok, with Atreus reuniting with Odin in Asgard. This destiny is how it happens. Well, at least as decreed by the Norns, the ruler of destiny. They state that
there is no grand design, no script, only the choices you make. That your choices are so predictable, merely make us seem prescient.
But spoilers, Kratos doesn't end up dying, and with Odin being cast into oblivion by Sindri, it seems that fate has indeed changed its course. Who could have changed this fate? Many, like MJ Punjabi, believes that Brock is the crux of fate's destination. A mystical mermaid known for creating masterful weapons, the Lady of the Forge is sought after by Brock and Kratos to forge the Draupnir spear, being crafted to fight Heimdall. But the Lady of the Forge seems to ignore Brock, as if he wasn't there. This is because he is missing part of his soul. Mimir explains that there are 4 parts of the soul: form, mind, luck, and direction. Brock is missing his direction, which is what the Lady of the Forge listens for. MJ Punjabi furthers that like the Lady of the Forge, the Norns, the Forger of Fates, were unable to see Brock. Brock's unveiling of a tear-disguised Odin led to a drastic change of sacrifice. As the ladies based their prophecy on the predictability of nature, perhaps the loss of direction made one unpredictable. This changes the course of Atreus and Kratos, who originally have closed hearts to the casualties in war. But their hearts are open, wanting to save as many lives as possible in Ragnarok. This changing of heart from Kratos and Atreus is the most commonly thought reason for as to why fate had been altered. Kratos and Atreus understood the casualty of war, so began to only kill people if it was a necessity. Atreus decides to break the mask of creation, while Kratos decides to spare Thor. Perhaps actions that could have not been predicted due to their earlier nature. And this does tie more strongly into the whole theme of Ragnarok. However, examining the mural more closely, Snack217 proposes that Thor is the unpredictable one, changing fate. The mural depicts a fallen Kratos in Atreus' arms, laying before a triumphant Thor. Perhaps when Kratos was sparing Thor, throwing down his weapons, Thor could have simply struck down Kratos, continuing his long distrust for him. This could have been what the mural portrayed, with Atreus attempting to use a marble to desperately save Kratos, and maybe even using the mask as directed by Odin to save his father. Snack217 suggests that the Norns are aware of Kratos' sadness upon killing gods, so surmises that they are aware of his changing emotions.
He still slays gods, but now he's sad about it? You are the sum of your choices, nothing more, and you will do what you do best.
But it feels that even with his sad emotions, his actions were not going to change, and killing gods would still long be on the menu. The changing of Kratos' actions still seemed the most likely to cause the Norns' predictions to fail. And maybe even the prophecy was still met in some way. Instead of the physical father, Kratos, dying, the All-Father, Odin, died. But no matter whether Thor broke the prophecy or not, his change of heart and trusting of Kratos enraged his father Odin, who impaled Thor with the spear, killing him. Thor dissolved into small particles, floating away. Normally when gods are slain in God of War, their corpse remains where they have been felled, but for Thor, he seems to dissociate up to a higher plane. So let's change our plane on this iceberg to the higher plane. And it's at this higher plane that many, like something Joker, think Thor now exists in, having not actually died. The Olympian goddess of wisdom and war, Athena, guides Kratos, but ultimately shows deep love for her people and family, sacrificing herself in the God of War 2 in order to save her father Zeus. When Athena dies, she also dissipates into the same particles. In God of War 3, Athena returns in an astral form, stating that her sacrifice to save Zeus has brought her to a higher existence. Story writer and director of the God of War games, Cory Barlog, states her selfless acts allowed her to ascend to a higher plane, a place that is higher than everybody else. In Norse mythology, there are 3 planes. The lowest realm, beneath the roots of the tree of life Yggdrasil, Niflheim, is the realm of the dead. Above it is the realm of mortals, Midgard, and above that is the home of the gods, Asgard. Athena ascended to a higher plane above Asgard, even above the gods themselves. And no one really knows much about this plane, so could Thor have gone there too? Thor, the ruthless slayer of giants, changes into a man against ruthless killing, in order to show a good example to his children. This causes his death, so it can be argued that he does die selflessly. In the Fallen God comics, Kratos dreams of the astral Athena, along with another god, Thoth, who could potentially also be in this higher plane. Now, Thoth is from Egyptian mythology, and only appears in the comics for now. Thoth is the god of arts and magic, and the inventor of writing. Captain Kuba judges these as being worthy, good enough to enter the higher plane of existence, proposing that this plane only has the purest of gods, which would make sense with Athena, and potentially Thor being there. But I think perhaps Thoth could be playing a different role in this apparition. Thoth is also heavily associated with the Judgment of the Dead, inscribing the interrogation and judgment of souls, along with the disputes of the gods. The higher plane being a place for gods whose virtues are worthy would be a perfect place for Thoth, with his symbolism of judgment. Or perhaps he is even judging who is able to enter the higher plane. So maybe Thor would be there. Yuki3834 does propose 2 other reasons for why Thor could have dissociated if it wasn't to travel to the higher plane. One less lore-friendly reason is that the developers didn't want his body laying around during the fight with Odin. But with Santa Monica's level to detail with the lore, I don't think this reason is that likely. The other theory is that Thor teleported away. It's hinted that Thor is able to teleport, appearing between Heimdall and Atreus. But I don't think that Thor would teleport away after making such a profound statement of courage in front of his father. Even so, I'm not entirely convinced that this higher plane is such a great place after all. The higher plane seems to place Athena on a pedestal, and for someone who is perhaps the most selfless god in the God of War, she becomes egotistical, even plotting to kill Zeus, who she sacrificed her life for in the first place. It's as if the higher plane has corrupted her. Mike Who TV thinks that this higher plane is an ominous undertone during Ragnarok. This is due to the subtle storytelling of colour. Sony's Santa Monica heavily focuses on storytelling, having conducted many games developer conferences on this topic. For example, red represents the colour of Sparta and Kratos, with the loyalty version of the Radiant's armour set stating that red is his favourite colour. Thor's dissipation appears in blue, and that connects with Kratos' dream about the higher realm. But when Athena dematerialises to a higher plane, we can see a slightly different colour, with her particles floating up, clearly being green. And when she returns in her astral form, her eyes yet again shine the same green hue. And there's one key piece of Ragnarok's story that contains this same green hue. When Odin murdered Ymir, a tear in reality appeared, and inside it emits this same green hue. Green is often associated with many antagonists in God of War, Athena being one, Persephone, the queen of the Underworld, and the wife of Zeus, Hera, who despises Kratos. So perhaps like Disney, green is used to represent evil, perhaps displaying the corrupting nature of both the higher realm and the crack in reality. Mike TV proposes that when Odin killed Ymir, the ancestor of all giants, Jötunheimr, he transcended to the higher realm. But because he was so large, he caused a rip in reality, tempting the gaze of both Odin and Atreus. It's worth noting that unlike Disney, Norse mythology relates green to the natural world. I know an ash standing, called Yggdrasil, a high tree sprinkled with snow-white clay. Thence came the dews in the dale that fall. It stands evergreen, above all that is well. Yggdrasil is the evergreen tree of life, but perhaps the better comparison of green is with the game's namesake, Ragnarök. The first part of the prose Edda, Kilvaginning, details the destruction of the world, Ragnarök. Chapter 53 states that after Ragnarök, the earth will appear once more, beautiful and green, where self-sown crops grow. In that time the earth shall emerge out of the sea, and shall then be green and fair. Then shall the fruits of it be brought forth unsown. So we could relate this transition to a higher plane, the passage to a new world, being represented aptly as green. Odin himself becomes obsessed with the reality tear, feeling its power of knowledge and truth. He tells Atreus that his gazing into the rift caused him to lose his eye. A magical mask, the Mask of Creation, is key to be able to unlock these mysteries. The Mask of Creation actually doesn't have any references in Norse mythology. Maddie Myers asked Anthony Burke about the backstory of the mask, and he responded that it represents Loki, the Norse Atreus, searching for identity. The mask is from the mask, and it was used as a reference.
Somebody stop me!
Odin.
Ragnarök is spent piecing together the mask, but upon its conclusion, Atreus finds his own identity. Choosing his own destiny, he breaks the mask, sending it hurling into the rift, sealing both the mask and the rift away. What a stupid decision for our curiosity. So will we ever know what the rift is? And what does the mask have to do with it? Odin did say that looking into the rift destroyed his eye, so perhaps he wasn't worthy of looking into the rift of creation. Or maybe it's the combination of needing worthiness and the mask. However, Mimir explains that Odin gouged his own eye out in order to obtain wisdom.
And so I set to demonstrate my worth by coming to him with something I knew he'd value. A mystic well of knowledge. Or rather, I should say, a well of water laced with enough mystic mushrooms to make a god see visions. Oh, he was rightly impressed. Can't say for sure what he saw that led him to try gouging out his own eyes, but I managed to restrain him before he finished the job.
Mimir prevented Odin from finishing the job. Does that mean gouging out any of his eyes? Or just his remaining eye? So could this be a white lie to save embarrassment in front of Atreus? Or did Odin know more about the rifts than meets our eyes? Odin is so hungry for power, surely he must have peeked into that rift. Maybe like Athena, looking into this rift will cause dissociation, a loss of touch with reality, and unlocks our inner evil. Mark T. Martin 22 supposed that this rift and mask are actually a link to Utengard. Mimir explains that the Utengard is believed by the giants. Even though Odin destroyed Ymir's body, he never ceased to dream, even after death, enduring forever. When Atreus first enters the dream world of Utengard, he sees a fully intact mask. This rift, opening upon Ymir's death, is the entry into the dream world that only the giants can enter. Odin desires to enter here in order to obtain all of Ymir's knowledge, but cannot enter as he is not a giant. Maybe that's why he's after the Mask of Creation, deceiving Atreus into collecting the pieces for him. The breaking of the mask and the sealing of the rift condemns Odin to be ever naive to the secrets and powers of the giants. An interesting theory, but there are still some open questions. If Odin required a giant, why not just use his son Thor? Well, maybe it has something to do with the mask's inscriptions, which can be read by Atreus, as some of them are Greek. These inscriptions suggest that the rift is proposing a realm that transitions mythology, containing all of the mythologies. But perhaps it's just the place of the giants across mythologies. I think it's more likely that this rift, like Maiku TV concludes, is a teasing of a future realm we explore in God of War, one that traverses across all mythologies. And Kratos will encounter this once his story is nearing its end. And that could be any time, now knowing that predictions painted by the giants are not bound to destiny. Another shrine whose outcome has changed is the Shrine of Jormungandr. Originally a giant whose locked soul becomes free, mysteriously appearing as the world serpent. This shrine depicts the birth of Jormungandr by Angerboda and Loki. This part is fulfilled by Atreus and Angerboda resurrecting a soulless slag with a giant's soul. This serpent slithers away, growing rapidly, until it returns during Thor's final battle, where it alludes that he's been sent back in time, completing the cycle. The right-hand side of the shrine depicts the Jormungandr winning the battle against Thor, killing him with his poisonous breath, being the fate of Thor during Ragnarok. So maybe something unpredictable changed these turns of events too. But what interests me more is back onto the left panel of the prophecy. It depicts Angerboda feeding the Jormungandr, Serpent of Midgard, with the Iron Wolves underneath. Inscribed in Elder Fulthark is Sorna Lorca Orca, Angerbortha Brotha, Fenris Helja Orca, Junvaga, son of Loki and Angerboda, brother of Fenrir, Hel, and the Iron Wolves. Now everyone mentioned here makes an appearance in Ragnarok, except for one, Hel. So there's still a child unaccounted for in this origin prophecy, one that hasn't been seen. And in Ragnarok, the Midgard Chronicle points out a medallion, looking similar to the prophecy. At the centre of this medallion is the depiction of Hel. So how could this important character come about? In Norse mythology, Kilva Kinning states that Loki had 3 children with Angerboda. One was Fenris Wolf, the second, Jormungandr, is the Midgard serpent, and the third is Hel. Hel was cast into Helheim, and given powers over the 9 realms to assign all that were sent to her, those that had died of old age or sickness. But in God of War, the ruler of Helheim is Hraesvelgr, a giant who takes the form of an eagle. The Hraesvelgr lore marker states that the Swallower of the Dead, Author of Winds, is not the first to claim the title of Hel, nor will she be the last. So Hel seems to be a title that can be assumed rather than a name. Mimir states that Hraesvelgr would like to retire.
Retire? Hel's eagle wants to retire?
Indeed. And don't ask me what she expects to do with her free time. I assure you there is no reassuring answer.
Can she even do that? Not be Hel?
Apparently so. She just requires relief. Someone else to step in and become Hel.
It seems like it's set up that Loki and Angerboda's next child, Hel, will be taking over from Hraesvelgr and assuming this role. Zhao Lewen presumes that based upon their previous children being born by the gifting of a soul, maybe Hel will be born the same way. As to when the giant will be released from the marble, it isn't that clear, but it seems like the next God of War may still be tying some Norse mythology together. A very strange family history with confusing relationships and time warps. There are still many unanswered questions around Atreus' family. Atreus' son, Jormungandr, can be summoned using a horn. In God of War, Atreus is overwhelmed by his powers, causing him to become sick. Kratos brings him to Freya's house, hoping that she'll be able to help him. And upon travelling there, they hear an ominous sound.
Somebody just called the serpent.
Someone else is called the Serpent, but the holder was not fully revealed. And with the release of Ragnarok, the caller of the Serpent is still clouded in mystery. Mr. Hubo Master relates the Serpent call to a similar horn found in Ragnarok. A mighty horn of Heimdall, the yellow horn was a battle horn used to warn other gods. The Kilva Kinning states that the trumpet yellow horn can be heard throughout all worlds. And when tidings come to pass, then shall Heimdall rise up and blow mightily in the yellow horn, and awaken all the gods, and they shall hold council together. Kratos himself mightily blows the yellow horn, having slain Heimdall previously. With the armies of the realms being called to battle. Mr. Hubo Master supposes that this horn is actually the horn we hear calling the Serpent, as not only does it reverberate around realms, but also throughout time. An interesting concept, but ultimately a tough one to fully understand. The Jormungandr seen at the end of Ragnarok is only the younger version, having been sent back in time by Thor. And more conclusively, Corey Barlog did reply to this theory, saying that while it was cool, it was wrong. But does allude that there is a right answer. One of the more popular theories is that Balder was actually the one sounding the horn. Corey hinted in 2018 that the blower of the horn was looking for them, and this drew many to the attention of Balder. Balder, the god of light and peace, is the son of Odin and Freya. Upon his birth, it was prophesied that his death would be a pointless tragedy. Freya then created a powerful enchantment to prevent Balder from ever being hurt. Unfortunately though, this cursed him, and he could never taste, smell, or feel.
Feasting, drinking, women, it's all gone.
You'll never got to feel pain again.
Driven to insanity and goaded by the words of Odin, Baldur's intent on hunting down Kratos and Atreus, admitting that hurting the big snake would bring the two of you out in the open.
I had a feeling that hurting the big snake would bring the two of you out in the open.
Baldur was definitely looking for Kratos and Atreus, and perhaps to lure Jormungandr, he caught him with a horn. But yet again Corey refutes this theory, stating that it was just a misdirection, and the real answer has a clue hidden in the outside world. Some theorise that it was Angerboda, having been able to speak to the serpent. She would have been able to summon him. But Dar Porkinator has a deeper theory, and believes that Loki, the god of misdirection, blew this horn. When the horn is blown in the 2018 game, Loki told the Jormungandr not to listen to the Yellowhorn's call, so it would just be the younger serpent there. The horn is blown strategically when Kratos and Mimir cannot see who has blown it, which a future older Loki would have been very particular to avoid. And maybe this informing to the Jormungandr was also the altering of prophecy, maybe rewriting the story of old Jormungandr consuming Thor. Definitely a concept that Corey and Santa Monica could have in mind, but it would need a lot more development in the story to pan out. In truth, I'm not convinced that the caller of the serpent is yet written in stone. Originally the caller of the serpent could have been Balder, but has since been changed. Perhaps the next God of War answers, or at least provides more clues to this mystery. And if Loki travelling back in time sounds far-fetched, it isn't even the only theory surrounding it. But to explore further, we must travel back ourselves to the Underworld layer. Kratos explains to Atreus that he was named after a Spartan warrior.
He was a soldier, a Spartan.
A great warrior?
All Spartans are great warriors. We trained from birth. Our lives were discipline, duty, battle, and death. Life was grim, and we greeted it grimly. But Atreus of Sparta was unlike the rest of us. He wore a smile even in the worst of times. He was happy. He inspired us to hope that though we were machines of war, yet there was humanity in us. Goodness. When the day came for him to lay down his life in battle, his sacrifice saved countless others and turned the tide in our favor.
Richard Lacerer 6668 believes that Atreus was actually named after himself, with Atreus of Sparta being Atreus. They suppose that when Kratos and Atreus' journeys depart from one another, Atreus will eventually travel back to be with his father again, to understand what Kratos was like before he was condemned as the ghost of Sparta. The hope and attitude described by Kratos on the Spartan Atreus are ones that are slowly being evoked from Atreus in Ragnarok, and could perhaps transition into the Atreus of Sparta. If this theory is true, Atreus may be one of the very few individuals appearing in both the Greek and Norse worlds of the God of War. One hinted at having done so is Tyr, the Norse God of War. And before the release of Ragnarok, many believed that Kratos was actually Tyr, and to help understand Tyr a bit more, let's explore that a bit. Before God of War, Tyr was only mentioned, with many clues being left in the tapestry of histories. These tapestries show Tyr's visiting other mythologies, like Greece, and although being the God of War, Tyr fought for peace. Come the end of the 2018 God of War, Kratos and Atreus began changing from their bloodlustful ways, with Chrome Far originally proposing that Kratos, like Jormungandr, was sent back in time during Ragnarok and began trying to prevent Ragnarok, becoming the peaceful god, travelling through worlds. God of War 1 concludes with, and from that point forward, throughout the rest of time, whenever men rode forth to battle for good cause, or for evil, they did so under the watchful eye of the man who had defeated the gods. They were driven forward by Kratos, the mortal who had become the new god of war. Agent hamsters and others thought this was a reference to Kratos, travelling through time and worlds, watching all. The prophecy in the God of War depicts Atreus holding a dead Kratos, who seems to be missing his right hand. In Norse mythology, Tyr is renowned for only having one hand. The poetic Edda, Lokasenna, states that the wolf Fenrir had bitten off Tyr's other hand while he was bound, while the prose Edda stated that Tyr placed his hand into Fenrir's mouth as a pledge. Even with all of these parallels, come Ragnarok, Tyr is revealed to be separate from Kratos, imprisoned. It's thought that he's found imprisoned in the Svartalfheim mines, but this is later revealed to be Odin posing as Tyr, with Tyr remaining imprisoned until Ragnarok. When Tyr is released, he utters,
Kratos. I know that name.
This further alludes that Tyr has travelled to the Greek mythologies, remembering the name of Kratos. An urn can be found in Tyr's temple, depicting the Greeks rebuilding their world after it was destroyed by Kratos. But this Tyr has both arms intact, with Mimir mentioning how he lost it to the ferocious wolf Garm, but grew it back.
So, Mimir, how did they capture Garm in the first place?
That was Tyr's doing. He lured the beast somewhere safe and kept it distracted by lending his own arm to be gently chewed. Once the chains were on and the gate to Helheim was opened, Garm bit Tyr's arm clean off in retribution.
But Tyr's not missing an arm.
Well, it grew back, eventually. He is a very resourceful god, after all.
This arm is heavily tattooed, with what seems to be Egyptian hieroglyphs tattooed onto his arm. ZSL 454 spent their time translating the hieroglyphs on the sleeve of Tyr, and upon determining that these hieroglyphs were mirrored along his arm, translated them as Him, King, the Revered, all the gods, alas, I eat the child, I, ruler. Now there's no real concrete understanding of what any of these hieroglyphs could mean, but what we can draw from this is that Tyr has visited Egypt, and perhaps we will visit Egypt again in the future, maybe being the next mythology after Ragnarok. Like Tyr, I've travelled across the God of War universe, reading countless threads, articles, and comments, where I stumbled across one that stuck in the back of my mind, but I haven't seemed to find it again since. They mentioned that if the next God of War mythos was Egypt, it could reintroduce Athena, and perhaps extend to the higher plane, as she was known to hide in Egyptian mythology. There is no proper mention in Greek mythology that Athena travelled to Egypt, but the Egyptians believe otherwise. Greek historian Herodotus of the 5th century BC wrote a detailed record of the Persian Wars, claiming to have travelled extensively around the ancient world, and collecting many stories to all contain in his book, Histories. One of the earliest records of the Persian Empire, history delves into the ancient city of Sais, to the west of the Nile. He details the festivals of Neith, the Egyptian prime creator, creating all the universe and all it contains. On the night of the sacrifice, they all keep lamps burning in the open air round about their houses. A sacred tale is told, showing why this night is thus lit up and honoured. The Greeks blended these beliefs into their own mythology, with them adapting Neith to be Athena. And Plato describes the Greeks' other assertion that Athena is the Greek version of Neith. The founder of their city is a goddess, whose name in the Egyptian tongue is Neith, and in Greek, as they other, Athena. The people are great lovers of the Athenians and claim a certain kinship with our countrymen. While going back to historian, Herodotus states that Sais houses the temple of Athene. The Egyptians believed that Athena was a goddess who had either learnt from Neith or was Neith herself, with the Greeks simply forgetting Neith's name over time. The inscriptions of Sais is the writing of a priest's decree of the goddess Neith, and how the Greeks morphed her into Athena. O Solon, Solon, you Greeks are always children. There is not such a thing as an old Greek. You are young in soul, every one of you. for therein you possess not a single belief that is ancient and derived from old traditions, nor yet one science that is hoary with age. So if God of War is transported to Egyptian mythology, potentially Athena will be reintroduced, maybe with the higher plane being exposed more thoroughly. But maybe there are more clues to uncovering what God of War's next mythology is, now that Ragnarok has effectively signalled the end for the Norse mythology. In the IGN Ragnarok spoiler cast, director Eric Williams alluded Tyr has 6 very specific post-game animations, and these could allude to where he has travelled, or where he could be travelling to.
And we wanted it to feel like the world's still there. You can't end and him say, there's much to do, and then it's just like the game's over and then that world stops. So we wanted to have this like living, breathing post-game where you get to see little wrap-ups with characters and you get little hints of where they could go in the future. And even though it's the end of the Norse saga, we leave it open for maybe there are other things with other mythologies and whatnot. So we'll see where the future of Santa Monica goes. Now, I mean, if you pay attention to Tyr, I mean, there's a reason why he does the 6 animations that he does at the end of the game.
Williams seems to be holding his tongue on this topic, so maybe this is a hint at the future of God of War, or it could be another frustrating misdirection. Well, to find this out a bit further, let's look through Tyr's poses. In Helheim, Tyr stands in front of Hraesvelgr, making some sort of circular motions with his hands. In Vanaheim, at Freya's camp, he does more circular motions, but creates circles with each arm. In Svartalfheim, near to Vesla, Tyr is kneeling, facing out to the waters. While in Alfheim, Tyr stares at the sky, with a hand on his chin, contemplating. At the Spark of the World, in Muspelheim, Tyr sits cross-legged, staring into the cosmos. Yet in Midgard, Tyr is practically gaping at the sky. Now these poses could provide us with many possibilities, so maybe we should first entertain an answer we have already pondered. But this is where Egyptian mythology doesn't really match. There aren't really any poses that match with the Egyptians. But also relating to Tyr is another grouping of 6, the 6 stolen treasures. One of these artifacts is the Ankh, with Kratos' codex stating that it's a symbol representing the concept of life, comes from a land I've longed to visit.
Oh, an artifact from the River Empire. Never been myself, but I hear it's lovely.
Perhaps this, along with Tyr's tattoos, probe at the mythologies to come, while the poses just display the mythologies that have been visited. Many other theories have been postulated as to what these poses could lead to. Some think that these poses could hold a hidden message, perhaps code for a specific mythology. Gizwizard thinks that these could be symbolism of Celtic rune poses, while many draw resemblance to Hindu mythology, with many of the poses relating to yoga, while others see it as Tai Chi. But the theory I'm most consumed about is not to do with Egypt, so we can hop off the Egyptian hype train for now. I believe that these poses are more likely pointed towards the Maya mythologies. Angry Unicorn also points these out, relating the poses that Tyr makes at the Spark of the World and Svartalfheim to be direct references to the Mayas. The Mayas recorded their history in folding books known as Maya codices. The oldest surviving codex, the Dresden Codex, contained drawing of quite similar poses. Another one of Tyr's stolen treasures is a Maya sculpture from the Southern Empire. Now that is a civilization that Kratos would like to visit. Their ruler of the heavens apparently saw fit to gift humanity with advances like writing, farming, the calendar, and sciences. Maya has the ruler of the heavens, and in both of these poses, Tyr is staring at the heavens, the cosmos. So I think it's pretty likely that these 2 poses would be representing the Mayas. But this isn't as deep as we can go into linking Tyr with the Maya. Eric Williams pointed towards the poses that Tyr made, but perhaps they are just part of the puzzle. For example, the Tyr found in Helheim, standing in front of Hraesvelgr, seems to be doing some form of meditation. This form of meditation could perhaps be communicating to the eagle Hraesvelgr. Birds are a recurring theme in the Maya mythology, with one of the most important gods, Ysmir, often being depicted with bird-like features, thought to reside in the sky. Yet perhaps the more appropriate god for this analogy is Quetzalcoatl. Known as the Plumed Serpent, this deity is claimed to be a source of all Mesoamerican people. Many animals are thought to represent Quetzalcoatl. However, throughout the centuries, Quetzalcoatl's image began to change. With the migration of tribes, more emphasis was placed on war and human sacrifice, linking with heavenly bodies. Quetzalcoatl became the god of the morning and the evening star, the symbol of death and resurrection. A sacred text of the Mayan mythical creation, the Popol Vuh is one of the foundational scripts created even before the Spanish conquest. Leading translator Dennis Tedlock states that at times, the Popol Vuh would claim Quetzalcoatl to be a serpent, or a jaguar, and sometimes even an eagle. As the morning star, the eagle spreads their wings, and the penitents and sacrifices knelt down. The Florentine Codex, which was written after the Spanish conquest, depicts Quetzalcoatl as an intermediate between the gods and humanity, with Quetzalcoatl commanding the people swiftly or would come forth to learn what Quetzalcoatl had commanded the people, with the priests taking their conduct from the life of Quetzalcoatl. So is this portrayal of Tyr and Hraesvelgr, man and eagle, actually a subtle hint towards Mayan mythology? At Freya's camp, Tyr can be seen performing what many relate to Tai Chi.
Your love of this place. I can feel it. Smell it in the breeze.
Tai Chi promotes meditation, mindfulness, and could be promoted by Tyr feeling the nature here. The Mayas were deeply connected with nature, incorporating their whole life and spiritual life around it. Tyr can smell it in the breeze, perhaps a reference to the wind. Throwing back to a previous pose, Hraesvelgr is also associated with wind. He is called Hraesvelg, who sits at heaven's end, a giant in the shape of an eagle. From his wings, they say the wind comes over all people. Quetzalcoatl as well is also associated with wind, with his full name being Quetzalcoatl Ehecatl, with Ehecatl simply meaning wind in Nahuatl. A lot of links with Maya mythology, but it could be us simply trying to force pieces of the puzzle together, to find reasons for why the Maya could be the answer. Maybe these poses are truly only mythos that Tyr is already visited, with no hint where he could go in the future. In Midgard, Tyr simply asked to be left alone, and if we are to keep following context, one of the stolen treasures, the Jarnbir, can be found close by. Although Kratos mentions no longing of wanting to visit the East in his codex description, and Jarnbirs originate from Yemen, spreading around the Middle East. This I think just relates to part of the world that Tyr has visited. And maybe, like the mystery of who blew the horn, Santa Monica were keeping the next mythological world of God of War relatively open. Cory Barlog stated that the God of War was originally going to be set in Egypt, but due to division and distraction, it pivoted to Norse mythology. So the same changes could still happen until development for the next game is well underway. But unlike this next game, our iceberg has been fully developed, and it's time for us to depart to the realm between realms. I hope you enjoyed this journey, and if you still crave God of War content, I recommend checking out Captain Kuba, who has much more God of War content, with many more theories. Thanks for making it all the way through this video, and if we're to believe the prophecy, it's destiny that we will meet again in another video.